Hello everyone and welcome. In this recording I'm going to be speaking about the shift of the nodal axis from Taurus and Scorpio axis from where it is now, a north node being in the sign of Taurus and south node is in the sign of Scorpio, onto Aries and Libra axis where of course the north node is going to go into Aries and the south node into Libra. And this will represent a really powerful and intense energy shift. Of course, even immediately around the 18th of July when this shift takes place. And speaking about this shift is going to be lasting until the 11th of January 2025, for that will be the moment when the nodes move on into the Pisces and Virgo axis. So we have around 18 months of this energy, but of course under the period of that 18 months it is going to be felt quite differently. Immediately as the nodal shift begins, so again I have to say on the 18th of July, it is not a very easy energy because immediately it will hold a T-square, so both the south node and the north node, with Pluto. Pluto who is retrograded back into Capricorn and there to stay until January 2024, because that is the moment when it will re-enter into Aquarius. But of course the square that Pluto will hold with the nodes, the T-square better said, is going to be felt much more intensely, as I said, at the moment of the energy shift, so 18th of July onwards, and it will be felt quite intensely at the very end of July, around the 30th of July, and then at the beginning of August, and also the intensity will last even in the autumn, but of course the expressions of this energy are going to be changing, are going to be shifting, because the North Node does meet in the sign of Aries, a very important power player. Of course, better said, not just one, but more important power players. But the first one is without a doubt planetoid Aries. And Aries has been very active along with Pluto these last couple of years. For in 2020, 2021, I do believe even 2019, they held a very long-term and aggressive square together. Pluto at the very end degrees of the sign of Capricorn, and Aries the end degrees of the sign of Aries. Usually she hung out at around 24, 23 degrees, 24, 25 degrees of the sign of Aries. And whenever their, square got perfected, or when one of those or both planets were retrograde, before they went retrograde, of course, when they were at standstill, when they were very shadowy, we could see this play out on the world stage, either as uprising, as internal conflict within an organization, within a country, within an institution, anything Capricornian like, people demanding their rights, sticking up, standing up to their solidarity, sovereignty. All of these are energies which are specific to the sign of Aries. But where I want to go with this, when Aries was, and Pluto as well, were very active, of course they activated mostly one another due to their long-term square, the energy spiked. So our collective behavior kind of followed that pattern, it followed that moment of action, so to speak, and it played out on the world stage in so very many ways. But this is where the South Node is also going to be involved in this picture. So the South Node is transiting Libra, will transit Libra from the 18th of July onwards. And that is all about diplomacy, that is all about the law, that is all about agreements, that is all about everything that has to serve, both parties, both sides. Libra is the only inanimate sign in the zodiac, So a lot of matters, are going to be affected by this, because Libra, due to its inanimate nature, can incorporate so very many expressions, from contracts to, everything that we think, certain mental patterns, certain emotional patterns. Why not? Because Libra is ruled by Venus. So even though it is an intellectual air sign, it does have quite a lot of emotion to it, philosophy, ideal, the higher octaves of Venus, so to speak. So we will see that play out in our lives, and of course in our world, of course the world stage as well, where certain customs, based on agreements, of course, not customs and traditions, for example, that are Taurian like or are Capricornian like, because those are demolished by Pluto, the Capricornian ones. This is basically the Libra ones, where it's really for the sake of principle, based on an agreement, based on something that everyone kind of wanted to create, like a normality. Now, to exemplify this, for example, the big international treaties, the human rights, for example, all of those are basically just ideals, just aspirations, things that we kind of felt and dreamed up collectively. Why not? Of course, some may argue that they have their basis in ancient law, certain laws of ancient civilizations, or of course in religion, or in divine law. And while that's absolutely true, all of them at the same time, still the way they exist in the present moment and the way they work, where they're really a matter of agreement, international agreement, where all parties want to make this real. And why is this very important? Well, because the South Node, and also uh, the South Node energy is going to be very, very activated in 2024, with certain eclipses that are going to be taking place very close to the South Node. And those eclipses will represent time of change, permanent change, where there will be no way to go back to the law, to legislation, to the diplomatic configuration existing in the world before then. So that is an energy that is going to be changing so very many things, especially alliances, partnerships on the world stage. Of course, in our individual lives as well, because, for example, a collective behavior with the South Node and Libra is going to be that we are going to change our minds, our hearts, our feelings, our sense of value about contracts, contractual partners, what it is that we can accept in our lives and that we can offer. How is it fair, equilibrious, um, and equitable to us personally, our family, our partners, etc., etc. So this is where we will have a profound change of behavior, of exactly what we can tolerate, what we can agree upon, what we can promise to uphold, to behold, to respect, and what not. And this is, of course, based also on the North Node in the sign of Aries, because that, amongst very many things, is a deep, deep contemplation of what our sovereignty, what our rights, individual rights, of course, and what our individual aspirations and goals are. It is an energy of initiation, it is an energy of self discovery, but also a lot of action, initiation, creativity, especially creating something new based on that. And what it is that we discover within ourselves, and what, for example, will be highlighted to where life's adventure takes us, Aries energy, very, very strong. That will change our partnerships, our behavior towards partnerships. And this isn't not just romantic partnerships, or better said, it is not really romantic partnerships that are the main target of this, but anything else. contracts, agreements, our relationship with authorities, external authority, even internal authority, even our own behavior, Libra, decision, how we make decisions and how we act upon them, how we behave, in respect to third parties, our diplomatic skills, our agreements, what it is that we tolerate, what it is that we accept in the name of common good, what it is that we sacrifice. Libra, for example, is a sign which is very, very non-confrontational, or if it's confrontational, then in a legal manner, if you know what I mean. All of this is also changing. What it is that we can respect other people's truth, other people's wills, express wills, a contract, other people's sovereignty. Well, chances are there will be a profound change here, because when we are being demanded to respect something, well, that something has to be, balanced. It has to be perceived in a balanced way by us as well, because otherwise we will decline. We will not respect. And when I say we, this is just like a collective behavior that can be very, very expected. So the South Node in Libra will represent, collectively speaking and even individually speaking, releasing all those patterns which do not serve us diplomatically, where we have to create certain and accept and hold down certain balances in our lives, certain agreements. This is where this energy is very, very against, forced peace. This energy is very against certain laws, legislation, regulations which serve the few and disserve ultimately the collective. So the many, in that sense. For example, certain laws, certain regulations, certain legislation which kind of forces the many to take on hardship for a select few to have it easy, even if that is rooted and based in compassion. Chances are this energy will transform and change for the long term, at least for the next 18 years. And this is really, really important, because this can represent moment of confrontation, moment of severe battles in courts of justice, legally, philosophically, in principle, in faith, in law, in so very many Libran things, which are not necessarily material real, but they do, have a strong effect on us, especially on the collective. Libra is a sign which has a lot to do with legislation and the law and the applicability of the law, especially, for example, civil law. And we will see this play out, for example, South Node in Libra, when certain, legislation which makes benefits and a certain kind of easiness be available to those who are weak, to those who are vulnerable, to those who are severely disadvantaged. Now, those will definitely be under the microscope and the force of change. Why? Well, Pluto squaring the South Node, first of all. Pluto is the planet of change. But then this is where to help those who are challenged, to help those who are disadvantaged, to make the law and make basically reality fair as possible for everyone. That is absolutely okay, but not in a way where it's imbalanced, where those few who are helped gain much, much more power and advantages than those who bestowed this on them. So this is where laws and benefits and everything, human rights and what sovereignty means and everything like this of this nature is gonna be, let's say, recalibrated. And I needed to start with the South Node in Libra first, because that is how it will play out as release. And when it comes to release, that kind of happens on autopilot. That the release part of an energy is more fated than the creative part, and the release is ultimately the south node. And the south node can also be seen, when something is built up in great excess, then that needs to be taken care of. And it isn't always, for example, like a classical release of something bad. Even when you have some skills, mastery, something that you're greatly abundant in, and you sit on it, well, there will come a moment when you will need to release it. As in, do something with it, invest it, work with it, apply it one way or another, and that immediately balances out the energy. And the release is gonna, support the north node, the creative part, the path forward, what it is that we need to accomplish, that we need to achieve. And all of these keywords are so very tied to Aries. So now I'm going to go back to the north node in the sign of Aries. Now, this is a powerful energy shift because the energy was so very different, at least north node wise, until now. Because the north node on the 18th of January 2022, it entered into the Taurus and Scorpio axis. That is fixed energy. That was all about our values and how we perceive and embody our faith and everything in life. The North Node in Taurus invited us to embrace all that is natural, all that is simplistic, all that is, immortal value, and dig them up from the past if they got lost or, alchemized in not a very favorable way. South Node in Scorpio to release all the toxicity and the overcomplication of life. That which is way too sophisticated, way too complicated, under a shroud of mystery, well, that is not all that much needed. Everything that is simple, promising, straight, leading forward, for example, a good construction material, Taurus, was encouraged. But this was a fixed energy. So there was a sense of having time to do this, or needing time to incorporate. Now, before that, and I'm speaking about 2020, especially May of 2020, 2020, when the nodes of the moon were in Gemini and Sagittarius axis, when they entered that axis, that was like a mental energy. That energy was very quick, very adaptable, very mutable, but it was mental. So it needed balance, it needed equilibrium, it needed learning, it needed intelligence to bypass stuff or to, accomplish stuff, for any acquisitions. It was a really, really good energy for negotiations, for speculations, for alliance, or to change the dynamics of alliances in our lives. Yet this energy is going to be very, very different because this is cardinal energy, but not just any cardinal, Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, the first breath. It is severe in its nature. It is creational. It is strong. It is quick. It is impulsive. And this is how the energies are going to play out in our lives. As soon as the North Node enters into the sign of Aries, it will very quickly start holding a conjunction with Aries, planetoid Aries, goddess of discord, goddess of rebellion. So you can imagine that uprisings, not necessarily that they will grow in number, but they will grow in intensity and the effect that they produce. Because the effect that they produce is more important than before. Before, we can say from 2019 onwards, it was more like a preparation, a shake-up, an agitation. It was much more destructive oriented. Now it is constructively oriented with the North Node. It needs to produce something. Sovereignty, of course, that is one of the key words, but a harmonious sovereignty. where everyone's voice is heard, no one is left behind, everyone's urgent need is taken care of, and this done in a very equitable way. Again, the opposition to the South Node in the sign of Libra. Libra is all about equity, Libra is all about equality, even fraternity. Libra and Aquarius are signs which have so much to do with the French Revolution, or better said, the French Revolution and their keywords, and how, the ideals, the modus operandi, are like energies or symbols that have so much to do with these two signs, Aquarius and Libra. Especially Libra, what happens in the court of justice. Not necessarily the action leading there, but after the action, when it is processed and when it is integrated, how it reflects in legislation. So the Aries North Node is very constructive. So whatever action initiation goes on there, well, it is meant to create our normality for the next 18 years. And it is also encouraging us to make it that much easier to express ourselves, to express everything that we want to create, everything that we long for, everything of course new, everything innovative, everything adventurous, everything brave and bold, why not? Because all of these are specifics of the sign of Aries. The North Node in Aries is that life was always meant to be an adventure, to have a certain risk with it, to reflect basically how our sovereign wills, go hand in hand with the permissive part of reality, because sometimes reality is very permissive. That means very quickly it will lead to triumph, our initiation, our leap of faith, our action. Other times it is not very permissive. That is when we are stopped in our tracks by challenges, by obstacles. But that is the domain of Libra. From those challenges we learn. Why is it not permissive? Sometimes our own initiation is in the wrong. We may be too bold, too self-centered, too inconsiderate, and then Libra teaches us the lesson of how we need to adjust our ways. So even challenges and obstacles in this sense are very, very valuable, because those teach us the most. But going back to the nodal axis into Aries and Libra, well, this also recalls a period, especially for us individually, where the last time we experienced this energy was the very, very, very end days of December 2004 until June 2006. This was the time frame when we had the nodes of the moon in the same axis. So individually, it might be a little bit easier to see what happened in our lives back then, but not necessarily strong events, but the feeling. How did life feel like? And how, did you feel that you could accomplish your goals, your desires, your needs and immediate actions back then? Not necessarily event-wise, because the fated events are gonna be so very different at this moment. And speaking about fated events, the nodes of the moon moving into the Aries and Libra axis are not gonna be without certain triggers. The first trigger is, I do believe, immediate as it enters Aries, because that is the astrological point, 29 degrees of Aries and erratic Aries, when the past very, very powerful solar eclipse on the 20th of April this year took place. And this North Node is going to reactivate that energy. So what was planted in your life back then? How did you feel? what actions or efforts or plans or desires have been highlighted in your life back then, or what did your inner being urge you to go, to pursue, to follow, because Aries is also very, very, very instinctual energy. It acts out of sheer instinct, sheer gut. It is where, the inner animal is at its most powerful and also at its most intelligent. This is Aries has a very unique intelligence of its own, where it sometimes doesn't need the facts, it doesn't need the scorpionic or Gemini element, because it just knows. It is connected to nature's very, very own intelligence. And that is why the sudden actions of Aries very many times are victorious, or they achieve something great, or they are triumphant. Now, this is very true even in violent sense, because Aries knows how to do damage. But let's hope that will not be the case more than it is in a way fated. So anyway, the nodes of the moon are gonna activate that eclipse point, which took place at 20th of April 2023. So we will see that play out on the world stage, and we might also feel it deeply play out in our lives, because something new is created out of tension, out of chaos, out of turbulence, out of even turmoil, because energetic Aries may be out of the sheer sake of survival, but what is being created is powerful and it is here to stay. And it will be quite, significant in so very many ways. And we must not forget that Pluto T squares. So this Pluto T square, because it is not just an immediate energy, it will stay with us all through the summer and all through the autumn. It is where it challenges us to take our power back. Pluto, especially in Capricorn, is the planet of power. Now that power sometimes is centralized power, external authority, government, the state, society, name anything that basically holds a kind of power over you. Your job, your boss, your company, your livelihood, your marriage, your familiar situation, your home situation. It can be absolutely anything, because all of us have this transcending Pluto in one area of our lives. But whatever is holding power over you, this is where the dynamics of that have to be serving you more. Because why? North Node in Aries. Sovereignty and the service to the self. So this will create quite a powerful change in behavior, in collective behavior especially, where we will stop supporting that which we no longer want to accept in our lives, especially to have power over us, influence over us, or to have a saying in our everyday lives. And we will start supporting, of course, new elements which have a very healthy power over us, which, for example, give us power, make us feel more powerful, make us feel that we matter, make us feel safe, make us feel sound, make us feel loved, why not? So this will be very, very strong, especially it will reflect as a change, a profound change in our behavior. And this is deeply instinctual, so there is only so much control we can have over it. And needless to say, as soon as the North Node enters into the sign of Aries, Mercury will also have an outer sign square to it. So very, very quickly, it will have to come into our understanding. We will understand what kind of inner forces are rising up from within us, and how they will change our lives, choices, decisions, and immediate actions in the next 18 months. But of course, I'm going to be speaking about the T square that the nodes hold with Pluto in so very many horoscopes from the present moment onward, because they will be a very, very powerful trigger. And we must not forget that another very important moment is when planetoid Aries is going to be conjuncting the South Node. And this is somewhere around 30th of October. And that's when Aries is going to hover on the North Node and oppose, of course, the South Node in Libra. And, a little bit later on around the 6th of, I do believe, November, yes, 2023, it will hold an opposition to Pallas Athena. So Pallas Athena will conjunct the South Node. And that will be really, really important. So again, I have to remind you, 30th of October, 6th of November. These are dates when this energy is going to be very, very active. Pallas Athena and Libra conjunct the South Node. Which tactics, which laws, which compromises, which agreements, which solutions, especially legal ones and based on one-on-one agreement, do not work anymore because Pallas Athena is planetoid of tactics. And with South Node, she understands that change, release, transformation is very, very, very needed. And of course, Pluto is going to be squaring them because Pluto will be at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So the square is ongoing and pretty tight. Change will definitely be there. That is a massive diplomatic change. We will see changes in diplomacy in big power players of the world like NATO, for example. How will NATO look like or start to look like back then? How will the big dominant powers on the world stage look like? Especially their alliances with one another. So this will be a very, very important moment, and especially with Aries, protest, revolution, rebellion, uprising. Uranus around this time will be also very active. Uranus will just add to this energy. And then a very, very important key moment, also according to my personal opinion, will be February 2024, when this North Node meets Chiron in the sky. The conjunction to Chiron is profoundly healing, because that will be a moment when a lot of, let's say, positive, constructive, healing, aiding action will take place on the world stage. So efforts, collective efforts, international efforts, the efforts of many individuals, because we must not forget that Aries is all about the individual and only then the collective, if you know what I mean, are going to be pointed for healing purposes. Aid. Chiron is the planet of wounding and also the symbol of the wounded healer. Whatever we have suffered through, these past couple of months and years are gonna make us that much stronger in our conviction to heal others, to heal the world, to heal a situation, or for our actions to have healing side effects, if nothing else, if you know what I mean. So that will be that is also when militaristic action, law enforcement, etc., Aries again, is going to be directed towards something compassionate, Chiron. Now, on the 14th of October 2023, we do have a powerful South Node eclipse. A solar eclipse, a South Node solar eclipse. And that eclipse will take place around the 21st degree of Libra. And the South Node is at 24 degree of the sign of Libra. North Node opposing this from 24 degrees of Aries. So that is quite precise. That is very, very close to the nodes of the moon. And that opposes Aries once again. That eclipse is going to be very, very powerful for releasing. As I said, releasing old alliances, old tactics, anything old based on agreement, based on custom, based on what we wanted, what we willed expressly in a contractual sense, of course, some time ago. That which isn't working, which is imbalanced, which does no longer reflect our our current normality, will be released one way or another, either due to stress, protest, demand, uprising, Aries, or due to our realization of this. Because if I'm not mistaken, Mercury will also be in the sign of Libra at that moment, maybe not conjunct to the eclipse or the south node in a very precise manner, but Mercury's presence does make sure that we are processing this and we are adding cerebral energy there. So it is within our awareness. Another very important moment is going to be in May 2024, when Mars, the ruling planet of the sign of Aries, enters into its home sign and conjunct the North Node. That will be very, very powerful, because Mars at home in Aries, planet of action, planet of, expressing sovereignty of will, the male principle, and also conflict and everything else that comes along with Mars. But conjunct the North Node together in the sky, well, that means a big moment of action, a big moment of drive, a big moment of impulse, forward. Because we must not forget that this is deeply creational energy. Not only does it produce different dynamics within the self, a recalibration meant for greater survivability, for greater sovereignty, for greater independence, but also whatever it is that we need in our lives. This is also needs. This is also, in a way, a work aspect, because we can achieve certain things with adventure, with risk, with initiative, with even brainstorming. Why not? But other things can be achieved by hard work. And work is also pretty Aries-like when it has a big passion, when it has a big determination, when it has a big motive. So that promotes a lot of efforts which are creative, constructive, collectively and individually as well. Then we have the 8th of April 2024, when there is going to be a North Node solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. And that is profoundly creational, because it's a North Node solar eclipse that is meant to create something. That is meant to bring something truly exquisitely new in our lives, both individually and collectively. So to me, that says that however we processed the energies in Aries until then, collectively, and of course individually as well, gives us the reward of a big new beginning, so to speak. And this is where it's quite close to the North Node, because the Sun and Moon are at 19 degrees of Aries, along with Chiron, also precisely to the orb conjunct this new moon, the eclipse. So a very, very powerful healing energy. And the North Node is at 15 degrees of Aries, so quite close. And the North Node is at the very midpoint of Aries. So that means things are gonna play out on the world stage, or however this energy plays out collectively is gonna be very, very impactful for all of us. And it might change certain things very profoundly in the world due to Chiron. Now, of course, with Chiron there is always a chance to wound, because this can also be an action that causes a certain kind of wounding, but our response to that is gonna be the healing power. and that which changes something permanently. Because, we can simply not ignore the fact that North Node in Aries is a very volatile energy. It is a very militaristic energy. It is not something that, waits for negotiations, exactly because the South Node is in Libra. Negotiations are released, they're not working. This is where it's very strong, impulsive, action oriented. And that can also mean sometimes militaristic action. So we must be aware that this will be part of the game, especially in certain parts of the world. This, because of the individual is so empowered. Pluto, after it goes back into Aquarius, so January 2024, that will really, really highlight the importance of the well-being of the individual, because it is the individual who is the primary component, the basic, the singular component of the collective. You can't divide more than the individual. So that takes basically the greatest importance. So everything is going to be focused energy-wise, karmically, divine imprint-wise, on the needs and sovereignty of the individual. So the collective have to respect that one way or another, and usually when this energy plays out in the world, it means conflict, it means restlessness, it means inner dynamics within the country changing rapidly. Sometimes civil wars, other times more classical wars, other times very, very heated South Node and Libra legal battles that seem no end ever. So, big things in the international courts of justice, war crimes being judged and stuff like that. So, we must not ignore that this is also potentially part of how these energies may play out. And then finally, a very important moment again is around the 2nd of October 2024, when we have a South Node, once again solar eclipse in Libra, and that is where the eclipse is hand in hand with Black Moon Lilith and Mercury. The eclipse, so the conjunction of the Sun and Moon is at 10 degrees of Libra, Black Moon Lilith 10 degrees of Libra, Mercury at 11 degrees of Libra, and the South Node at 6 degrees of Libra. So again, very, very close to the node. And again, a solar eclipse, this is where it's a powerful release again. Whatever happened, with the first eclipse, that with the first South Node eclipse, so 14th of October 2023, well, this other eclipse on the 2nd of October 2024 is gonna be like a continuation of that, I do believe. Because Black Moon Lilith in Libra means that, when diplomacy is BS, when legislations and laws are more fiction and fantasy, let's dream something into existence because it seems so positive in a dream. Now Black Moon Lilith goes against that because it will call it out that as BS. That which is deeply idealistic but cannot really survive practically, or it really struggles practically, even if the ideal is so beautiful, even if it respects our purest spirit, if practical reality is not permissive of that, well, Black Moon Lilith is gonna call it out. And with an eclipse, there is gonna be a storm, a big storm where really the law changes. International law changes big time. What will that mean? We will see. But I do believe that that is where certain big agreements, like, let me give you an example. At the end of the Second World War, there was so very many agreements where they split up Europe, for example. This eclipse might go back on exactly those agreements, and I'm not saying nullify them, but change them, transform them, rearrange them. This will be about sovereignty. So certain nations, ethnic groups, etc., will demand their sovereignty, and we'll see how events play out. And Mercury, no, Mercury is very important because Libra's cardinal. It will be in everyone's awareness what is going on. So it will be big, big energy. And then, around the 11th January 2025, the nodes of the moon will further shift into Pisces and Virgo axis, and that will be the subject of a totally different horoscope. But this is what I would like to say and mention about the present shift of the lunar axis. Thank you so very much for listening. Thank you for all the love and support. And if you liked this video and you found it useful, you can support me on the PayPal link in the description below, or you can share and thumbs up. Thank you again. Until next time, bye for now.